Stride Audio Show.
Presented by Speak English with Us.
Have you ever stood there in a supermarket hearing words fly by and suddenly your mind goes blank?
Oh, yeah. Someone just changed a meeting time at work. Your friend asks about weekend plans, or a store clerk tells you a new rule. You get every single word, but your brain just freezes.
That's exactly the moment I'm talking about, when you understand everything but can't respond. Instead of jumping in, you just nod awkwardly. Then seconds later, you panic because the conversation's already moved on.
And the worst part? You know you have something to say, but your words just won't come. So you end up saying a weak, one-word, okay, and feel stuck, totally passive.
This episode is perfect for B1 and B2 learners who want to break that frozen moment and speak up naturally, even when caught off guard.
Don't worry, beginners, you're welcome too. We'll keep things simple and practical today.
Here's the thing, it's not about your English skills failing, it's about what scientists call cognitive load. Your brain's juggling listening, planning a reply, and dealing with social pressure all at once.
That overload makes you freeze on the spot, meaning you can't respond immediately. But guess what? There's a simple two-step trick to buy time and keep the conversation flowing.
First, you practice saying a short confirmation phrase like, "So you mean?" or "Got it, so..." That buys you a half second to think.
Then you add one small piece of info to keep the ball rolling, maybe a time, a reason, or a choice. It's not about perfect sentences, but quick moves to stay in the game.
And here's a quick question for listeners. How many seconds do you usually stay silent before answering in English? 3 seconds? 5? Drop your number in your head right now.
While you think about that, stay tuned till the end. We've got a word tour with 5 super useful expressions we use today, the kinds you can start using immediately.
I bet some of you are listening while waiting in line, or maybe during a coffee break at work. Imagine how much easier your next surprise chat will be with this 3-second framework.
And later, we'll share one tiny but powerful trick to train your brain for faster English reactions. But first, let's dive into the real struggle everyone faces.
Let me tell you about a moment that still makes me cringe. I was at a checkout line, the cashier said. "We're closing this lane in 2 minutes," and I just stared at the candy rack like it could rescue me.
That's painfully real. Your brain's doing math, your ears are still decoding the sentence, and your face is trying to look normal at the same time. That's a lot.
Exactly, and I didn't even need a big answer. I just needed something simple like, "Got it, so I should move now?" But in that second, I couldn't buy time.
That's the key phrase here, buy time. Not in a sneaky way, just in a human way. You're giving your brain one tiny breath before you answer.
And when I finally heard myself say, "Oh, I see," I felt ridiculous. Because I knew I had more to say, but my mouth had already chosen the safest possible exit.
Same. I've done that at work when a colleague says, "Can we move the meeting to 3:30?" And I nod like I'm a dashboard button. No follow-up, no clarity, just a polite statue.
A polite statue is brutal, but accurate. And that's where the real problem starts. People think they need a perfect sentence, but the conversation only needs a small bridge.
Right? And that bridge is often just one short confirmation. If someone says something unexpected, your first job isn't to be eloquent. Your first job is to catch on.
Catch on means you understand after a moment, not instantly. That moment matters. It's the gap between hearing and speaking, and if you can use that gap well, you stop disappearing in the conversation.
So when your friend says, "We're maybe doing dinner on Saturday, not Sunday," you don't need a speech. You just need enough space to make sense of the change and reply like a normal person.
Exactly. And when you can't make sense of it yet, say that short bridge anyway. For example, so you mean Saturday now? That's simple, but it keeps you present.
Let's make this practical. Imagine 3 scenes. Your manager changes the deadline, a friend invites you last minute, and a shop assistant asks if you need help right now. In all 3, you're under pressure. But the pressure is different.
In the office, you may worry about sounding slow. With friends, you may worry about sounding rude. In public, you may worry about looking confused. Same brain, different costume?
Different costume is perfect. And the funny thing is, people often remember the feeling more than the exact words. If you look calm enough, even a short reply can work.
But calm is the hard part. When I feel the pressure, my chest tightens, my thoughts scatter, and I start hearing my own silence. Way too loudly.
That's why the framework helps. You don't have to build the whole reply at once. First, confirm. Then add one useful detail. That alone can keep the ball rolling.
So maybe the reply is, got it, so 3:30 works, or okay, so I can bring dessert, or right, so you need me to wait here, tiny, clear, and usable.
And notice what happens there. You're not trying to sound like a textbook. You're trying to stay in the conversation long enough to react naturally. That's a real skill.
There's also something emotional underneath all this. When you miss that first response, you can feel smaller than everyone else in the room, even if you understood perfectly.
And that feeling can stick. You replay the moment later and think, why didn't I say something? But the answer usually isn't effort, it's timing.
Timing, yes, and pressure. Your brain is trying to do 3 jobs at once, and that's why the answer comes late or not at all. This is where cognitive load really shows up in daily life.
Cognitive load just means your working memory is crowded. Think of it like too many tabs open. When one more tab pops up, everything slows down and the newest one freezes.
And that's not failure, that's overload. So the goal isn't be brilliant instantly. The goal is stay connected while your brain catches up.
Which is why the little reply matters so much. It's not fancy, but it buys you space. And space is powerful.
Let's do a tiny practice right now. If I say, we're changing the meeting to Monday, what's your first instinct? Silence, nodding, or a short confirmation?
And if I say, I'm heading out now, you coming? Don't try to write a perfect paragraph in your head. Just react on the spot, with something short and alive.
This is why our next section matters so much. We're not chasing perfect English, we're training the moment between hearing and answering.
And by the way, there's a phrase for this exact skill. We've already used it a few times, and in the word tour, we'll break it down properly.
So here's the question. Should we train fast reactions with a 3-second frame, or should we just wait until English feels automatic?
I'm not convinced the frame is necessary. If people keep stopping to use a pattern, won't that make them slower and more robotic in real life?
I get that concern, but that's missing the whole picture. The frame isn't a script for every moment. It's a tiny emergency bridge when your brain goes blank.
But if the bridge becomes a habit, doesn't it sound rehearsed? People might hear the same, so you mean, every single time and think you're reading from a card.
Not if you use it as support, not as the whole answer. In actual conversation, one short confirmation buys time and then you add something personal. That's what keeps it natural.
I still think some learners should push themselves to answer right away. If you always pause, aren't you training hesitation?
That's a fair challenge. But the pause already exists. The question is whether you use it badly or well. A controlled pause is better than a panicked silence.
Okay, but what about advanced speakers? They don't sound like they're buying time, they just answer. So why not skip the middle step and aim for that?
Because advanced speakers didn't start there. They built speed through repeated small responses. The frame is practice for the messy middle, not a life sentence.
I see the logic, but I'm still worried it can become a crutch. If every learner leans on one line, they may never learn flexibility.
Then let's make the training flexible. You don't memorize one sentence. You memorize a move. Confirm, then add. The words can change every time.
So you're saying I shouldn't just be the got it, so robot. Fair enough. I've definitely sounded like that before.
Exactly. And that's where the real practice starts. Let's test it with a real example. Your coworker says, "We need the report by noon, not 3 p.m. You don't freeze. You say, "Got it, so noon means today." Then you add, "I'll prioritize it now."
That's helpful, but I want to push back again. What if the situation is emotional? Like a friend saying, "I'm upset you forgot." A neat framework might sound too controlled for that moment.
True, and that's why the second part matters. You don't stop at the confirmation. You confirm the feeling, then move the conversation forward. "I'm sorry. I get why that hurt. Can I explain?" That's still fast, but it's warmer.
Okay, that version feels more human, and honestly, that's the part learners usually miss. They think quick English means shallow English.
Exactly, and that's not right. Quick can still be thoughtful. You're not removing emotion, you're making room for it under pressure.
But let me challenge the method one more time. Isn't it possible that people already know the words, but they just panic because they're being judged? In that case, shouldn't we focus on confidence, not sentence frames?
Confidence matters, yes, but confidence grows from repeated success. If every response feels impossible, confidence drops. If the learner can answer even a little bit, confidence starts to rebuild.
So you're saying the frame is not the destination, it's the first rung on the ladder.
Exactly. And that ladder is especially useful in the moments we talked about earlier. The store line, the sudden meeting change, the friend's last-minute invite. Those are the places where people go blank because the pressure is sneaky.
Sneaky pressure is right. Nobody announces, "Hello, I am now a stress test." It just appears, and your brain starts buffering like terrible video.
Nice image. And this is where on the spot comes in. If you can answer on the spot, you don't need a perfect performance, you just need a useful one.
I can live with that, but I still want listeners to understand that the goal isn't memorizing magic lines. It's training the reflex to stay in motion.
Yes, and we can make that concrete. Here's a 3-part drill, here a line. Speak a short confirmation, then add one useful detail. No overthinking, no long pause, no apology.
So if I hear, "We're shifting lunch to 1:30, I could say, "Got it, 1:30 works. I'll join after my call." That's quick, clear, and not awkward.
And if someone says, "Can you help me move this chair?" you can say, "Sure, right now," or, "Of course, where do you want it?" It keeps the ball rolling without forcing a huge reply.
But what if the learner still feels blank? Then what? The drill sounds great, but real panic can be stubborn.
Then we shrink the task even more. Don't chase a perfect answer. Just name what you heard. Lunch at 1:30. Help with the chair. That tiny response can make sense of the moment enough to continue.
That's actually useful. Naming the message first feels less scary than building a full reply.
Exactly. And once the message is clear, the rest becomes easier. You've already caught on, and now you're no longer trapped by the first second of silence.
Okay, I'm convinced enough to keep testing it. We've got the pressure, the pause, the confirmation, the follow-up, and a real way to sound less stuck.
That's the win. Not perfect English. Faster recovery, clear reactions, and more natural momentum in real conversations. So far, we've seen how quick, simple replies can buy you precious time when you're caught off guard.
Right. Those short confirmations and small additions help you stay in the conversation instead of freezing on the spot.
Now, it's time for our word tour, where we'll explore 5 key expressions that make this 3-second framework work smoothly.
These phrases aren't just vocabulary. They're the tools that help you catch on fast and keep the ball rolling naturally in any situation.
Trust us, these words will boost your confidence when you're on the spot, facing those sudden chats we all know so well.
Let's dive in and learn how to make sense of these expressions and use them like a native speaker.
Let's go back to that checkout line for a second, because the whole episode really lives in those tiny moments.
Right, and the first expression we kept circling around was buy time. In daily English, it means using a short moment to think before you answer, not escaping, just creating breathing room.
So if your manager says, "Can you give me your answer now?" you might say, "Let me think for a second." That's a clean way to buy time without sounding unprepared.
And it's so useful because people often think they need a perfect reply instantly. They don't. They just need a tiny pause that sounds natural.
Exactly. And that pause is not empty, it's doing work for you. It's telling the listener, "I'm with you and I'm processing."
Another phrase we used a lot was catch on. That's when something starts to click after a moment. At first you're a little lost, and then suddenly, oh, now you get it.
Like when someone says, "We're moving the meeting to Monday," and your brain needs a second to catch on. You're not slow, you're just aligning the pieces.
And in a sentence, you can say, I didn't catch on at first. That's honest, natural, and really common in conversation.
I like that one because it sounds calm. It doesn't panic. It just says the understanding arrived a little late.
Then there's on the spot. This one means immediately, with no preparation. If someone asks you for an answer on the spot, you have to react right away. No notes, no warm-up.
Which is exactly why so many people freeze. Imagine a coworker saying, "Can you explain the delay right now?" That's a classic on-the-spot moment.
And you can say, I can't answer on the spot. That sounds firm, but not rude. It buys you honesty and space at the same time.
I love how these phrases match real pressure. They're not just vocabulary, words. They describe the exact shape of the problem.
Now let's move to make sense of. This means understanding something clearly, especially when it feels messy or confusing. If a message is jumbled, we try to make sense of it.
Like when a friend sends 3 half-finished messages about weekend plans, and you're trying to make sense of the whole thing before replying.
You could say, I'm trying to make sense of your message. That sounds natural and very human. No drama, just honest processing.
And honestly, that's such a relief for learners. You don't have to pretend everything is instantly clear. You can name the process while your brain works.
The last one is keep the ball rolling. This means continuing the conversation or activity without stopping. It's about momentum.
So if someone answers with a short confirmation, they can add one more detail to keep the ball rolling. For example, "Got it? Monday works? And I'll bring the slide."
Nice and smooth, the ball keeps moving, nobody falls into silence, and the conversation doesn't die in a corner.
And that's the beauty of the 3-second framework we talked about. First, you buy time. Then you catch on. Then you answer on the spot as best you can. And use a small detail to keep the ball rolling.
Let's rehearse it with a tiny scene. I say, the meeting moved to 3:30. You could answer, got it, so 3:30 works, and I can still join. That's clear and natural.
Or if a friend says, "We're going out now," you can say, "Oh, I see. Let me grab my keys." That's quick, alive, and very usable.
Notice how none of these replies are long. That's the point. Short phrases can do a lot when your brain is under pressure.
And if you want to practice, listen to a short line from a show, a podcast, or even a friend. Then pause and try one short reply out loud.
Start with one phrase, then add one small detail. That's enough. You're not building a speech, you're training a reaction.
These 5 expressions are going to make your English feel less frozen and more flexible, which is exactly what we want.
Keep hearing them, keep using them, and you'll start to recognize the rhythm faster than you expect.
So, to wrap up today's episode, we've explored why so many of us freeze when someone unexpectedly talks to us in English, especially in everyday moments like at work or while chatting with friends.
We learned it's not because your English is bad, it's because your brain is juggling too much at once. Listening, thinking, and answering all on the spot is tough.
Then, we discovered a simple 3-second framework. First, buy time by saying a quick confirmation like, "So you mean?" or "Got it, so." Then add a small detail to keep the ball rolling smoothly.
Those 2 steps help chunk the thought process and reduce pressure, making your responses feel more natural and less forced.
Here are a couple of practical tips to get started. 1. Practice short confirmations aloud every day, like when you talk to someone or watch a show, and repeat their lines with a quick reaction. 2. Challenge yourself with limit reply drills. Listen to a sentence, then respond within 10 seconds using confirmation plus a small addition.
I remember when I first started doing this, it felt awkward, but soon enough those short replies became automatic and I stopped feeling stuck in conversations.
Honestly, it's like training a muscle slowly. The more consistent you are, the easier it gets to catch on, buy time, and keep the conversation flowing on the spot, even when you feel pressured.
We'll explore more real-life strategies in future episodes as well. Next time, we might dive into handling tricky questions or managing misunderstandings naturally.
Before you go, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, what's one daily situation where you freeze and want to respond faster?
We read every comment, and it really helps us shape future shows. Thanks so much for listening and walking this path with us.
Take these new phrases into your next conversation and notice the difference.
Talk soon, and keep striding forward.